Well, here we are in Orlando, Florida, and I'm here to visit with my friend and fellow combat veteran, Dave Kelly. And Dave, first of all, I just want to thank you so much for having me come and
No problem.
spend some time with you, and you've been so gracious and hospitable. I just, it's always good to spend time with vets anyway, but it's been a special time for me, so thank you for that. And of course, what we're doing is we're continuing on with our oral history project, and we're getting the stories from the guys that we served with, basically, from in '68 and '69. And one of the reasons I was so anxious to get Dave's interview is that he had a personal part in touching more of the soldiers in 1968 and '69 than any other person in the company, in Charlie Company. And when I started looking for the guys back in 2002, when I found Dave, because he had been the company clerk, he had so much information, and you remembered so many of the guys' name. You actually helped me start building, a roster of guys who I should start looking for. So
A lot of those names I've forgot by now.
Yeah. And just to begin, would you please tell me where you were born and raised?
In a town in Indiana, Mishawaka, Indiana. That's where I was born. My father was born there, my brother and my nephew since then. They were all born in Mishawaka. And that's in the northern part of the state next to Notre Dame University.
And did you have siblings?
A brother and a sister, younger.
And what are their names?
Steve was my brother's name and Karen's my sister's name.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about your folks. What was it like growing up in Mishawaka?
Well, I was born during the war. It didn't end until the next year. And of course they had rationing and worried about food and stuff like that because you had rationing stamps. And I remember that as even, I don't know if this is really true because you also heard it when you're little, because I could have only been, I think, of 1.5 after the war ended. So, but I do remember that. And then they had rationing even after the war. My father owned a retail farm equipment store, and his father started the business in 1912. And my father is a hard worker. I do remember every day, 7 days a week, he went to work at the store. And we were open 5 or 6 days, but he worked the 7th just to catch up on stuff. And he had a total of 9 employees by that time, which are almost like parents of mine too, because we grew up, my house was right next to the store. And so we're very close with the employees. My mother, she was an accountant and a typist. Matter of fact, she always bragged about being the typist champion of Indiana for 4 years straight when she was in college. And so she helped him with doing the books and things like this. And I started working out there when I was 5. I'd sweep floors for 50 cents a week.
Big money.
Yeah, was to me.
For a 5-year-old.
Well, I saved money too out of that 50 cents.
Yeah.
Because I learned at an early age to put money in the bank. So.
And so you grew up in Mishawaka, of course, through your formative years, high school. Graduated from where? Which high school?
Penn High School. That was the biggest high school in Indiana by that time.
Okay. And then did you just go to college from there?
Yes, I went to Indiana University for the first, I went there 2 years, and I really wanted to be a preacher, but I studied to be a teacher instead of a preacher. And I came back after 2 years. Now, first of all, that was the first time I was ever away from home, and I didn't like that. Because I was working in the business, and I couldn't do that. That was another reason I didn't like it. So I came home, went to a local college, a teaching college, Actually, that's where I wanted to study, be the preacher too, and that was a Mennonite college in Goshen, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
1,200 students at that time.
Wow.
Still a small school. I don't even know if they even got 1,200 anymore. Studied to be a teacher. I did student teaching. I did it in second grade, and I always remember when you come in there, and I was just a student teacher, but all these kids would grab you and try to hug you because they couldn't get up high. They'd grab your legs and
Yep.
hug you. And that was kind of a turning point too. But I actually studied, I had a degree in secondary, well, the preliminary, the elementary school, and then secondary education too. And I got drafted out of my last year in college and sent to Vietnam. Did that, came back. I started working in the business right away. And
Let me ask you this. How old were you when you got drafted?
23.
Okay. So when you got to Vietnam,
Well, see, then that was just a month. My birthday's coming up in October, and I got drafted in August. In October, I had another birthday. It's 24.
okay, so as I recall, a 24-year-old coming into the company would be an old guy.
Yeah.
Did,
Well, and I was bald too.
so
Although I didn't realize I was probably as old, if not older, than the company commander, and I was definitely didn't realize that I was older than the executive officer.
that's true. Cy Krevling, right? I
Yep.
think he was 21
Yeah.
when he was there.
I always thought he was probably in his 30s. I don't know why, because he wasn't
well,
an old-looking guy.
he was an officer, I
Yeah,
guess.
probably.
How did you feel when you got the letter? I mean, you and I have talked about this, and you kind of expected it. But how did you feel when you knew you were really drafted and you were really going into the Army? What were your feelings about that?
Well, to be honest with you, there was a lot of people in my area, a lot of kids that were in my class or even younger. They were in my brother's class even, that they draft dodgers went to Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I kind of thought, that wouldn't be too bad going to Canada, but didn't do it. I tell people I was really a draft dodger, which is kind of true and kind of false both, but because I knew once I got drafted that was my duty.
Yeah. And when you say a draft dodger because you stayed in college and kept...
No, I thought that was going to work, but that wasn't working. I thought I could stay in college till I turned 26 and too old to draft, but it didn't happen. I had some friends that had done that over the years.
Do you remember how your folks felt, or what they said to you when you told them that you were drafted?
I don't remember exactly it, but I brought the letter over. Now, we lived just next to the business, and of course I got the letter was at the store, and anyways, I brought the letter over to my mom's, where she was in the house, and gave it to her. And of course, it was a letter from the president. And she told me that's going to happen. I actually, they had Vietnam when I was in high school. There's people getting drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And all the time during high school, and even the early part of the Indiana University part, I never even thought about would be drafted. I figured by that time it was going to be over.
Sure.
2 years was what I thought it was going to last.
Yep.
And it lasted longer.
Now, when you went to Vietnam, were you married, single, engaged? What was your marital status at that point?
Well, that's another problem. See, I didn't want to get married to stay out of service. I had some cousins that did it, but I wasn't going. I figured if I was going to fight, it's going to be in Vietnam, not with some married woman.
So, did you have any relationships going when
Had one.
And so,
It wasn't real serious, but we had talked a little bit about marriage.
did she think she was engaged at that point?
Well, she was still in high school.
Okay.
She was a senior that year that I left. And that is a long story, but her dad was a good friend of my dad, and her dad worked for my dad. And her mother was the very best friend of my mother. All the rest of my mother's life, they were still friends.
And so the families probably almost thought this would be a real good match, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, the families thought that.
I didn't think it, but
Yeah. So
I told you that why that was.
Yeah.
Different religions and
Yeah. Where did you go to basic training?
Fort Leonard Wood.
Give me a little bit of your
Well,
first
actually,
impression of that.
I had the letter that see, I didn't get drafted right away, even though the president said I'm gone in January. And then just a few days before that, I got another letter from the president. I wish I saved all these, that he had canceled the order of my draft. And I thought, well, it's going to be next month. Well, it was 6 months late. Actually,
Wow.
it wasn't until July that I got a letter. And I read in the paper, though, back in January, the reason they canceled it is because they ran out of money for the bus to take me to Chicago. That's the reason I figured it's going to go the next month. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until July.
So when you
67.
finally made it to Leonard Wood, what was your first impression? Did you go by bus?
No, train. That's the only first time I ever. I loved trains when I was a kid, and this train took us out of Chicago at 5 o'clock, and that train stopped at every little burg all the way to St. Louis. That's where and then we went by bus from St. Louis to Leonard Wood.
So what was your impression when they stopped the bus, opened the door, and told you
Told
guys?
you to get out. Well, that's kind of a funny story too. They had made me acting sergeant in Chicago when we left, and I had all the guys' papers that went there. And anyways, got out of the bus. You know, there's typical drill sergeants yelling at you, get out of the bus and get on. They had spots painted at this location, so we went out there, got on the spot. There's one guy that got off. I got off first, actually, and then there's one guy that didn't get off the bus until last. Then I found out later he was from Poland, because they drafted foreigners too. He was going to school apparently at Notre Dame.
Okay.
And he didn't stand on a spot. He went by a tree and sat down there by the tree in the shade, because this is summertime, August.
Yeah.
And those drill sergeants, they went totally berserk. I thought they were going to kill the guy. They didn't beat him or hit him or anything, but just going over there, just slamming him and hitting him on the shoulder and
Sure.
stuff.
Sure.
He finally did get up, and of course he couldn't really speak that great of English either. But that was my first contact with the Army.
And do you remember basic training in general? What was the routine, or what?
Well, I remember my first meal, because I loved food, and my mom said, when you get there, if it doesn't taste good, just sprinkle a little salt on it. And I didn't know that, but anyways, the first meal I had green peas on it for noon lunch, because we got in Leonard Wood probably around 10:30 or so in the morning. And I tasted that was the worst meal. Those peas were terrible taste, but it was because they weren't salted. I put some salt on there. Ate it. Then, of course, the other thing I remember, it didn't happen that day, it was the next day, but I had shaved my head before I went into service, because I knew they were going to cut your hair. Well, from home all the way through Chicago and stuff, these guys had the long hair at that time.
Oh yes.
Coming down
Oh
the
yeah.
shoulders and stuff. Well, anyways, they went in there, and I went in the barber shop, and he says, next, just walked away, because he wasn't going to cut anything.
There was
He
nothing.
did trim my sideburns up, because they were too long. But anyways, that wasn't a second, I'm out. And the rest of them went in, of course, just like shearing sheep,
Oh, yeah.
cutting that hair off. I couldn't recognize another guy that I'd met on the train and on the
Sure,
bus going
sure.
over. But they all knew who I was because I hadn't changed, but they did.
Sure.
So that was a big experience for me.
Was this your first time? Now you're gone from home, and is this the first time you actually were trained in weapons and? Had you
Never
had-
picked up a rifle or a shotgun. Although my dad had them, but I was never a hunter.
So this was really all new.
Yep.
Did you take to it? I mean, did you enjoy it?
No, I didn't. I didn't like guns. Period.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever told me at that time, even after I was in the army, I was going to kill somebody, I just didn't think that was going to happen. That was part of religious training.
Oh yes, and
And Mennonites, I ought to tell you too, Mennonites were really COs, conscientious objectors. And so I was looked down on when I left that college,
oh wow.
because I was supposed to do the conscientious objector thing, which I never thought of that.
So do you remember who your platoon sergeant's name was in basic?
That's a good one. He was Sergeant Ridley. He was a black man. His uniform was perfectly pressed, but he called me names I never heard before, cuss names and stuff. I mean, to everybody. He didn't just pick me out. But they made me an acting sergeant in basic. You know, where they put the little stripes on and all that stuff. And I think it's just because I was probably the oldest person in that basic group, and then I was tall and pretty good sized kid to the other kids, because I was at that age, I was 23, and most of them were 19 or
18.
Yeah, even 18.
Yep.
I don't even remember anybody who was 20.
So at that time in basic, you were at Leonard Wood. What was their Leonard Wood's mission? Were they an infantry base, or were they
Not
artillery?
infantry, just a basic training unit.
So they didn't have a mission like
Actually,
mechanized or
no, nothing like that. They were totally basic training.
just a school,
Yeah.
like Fort Ord, where I went, was
Yeah,
just
probably.
a basic
I never
basic
was at your fort, but it's
an
probably the
AIT,
same,
yeah. So at that time, did anybody say, well, most of the guys that are in this school are going to be infantry? Did the word
They
get
actually
around?
did say that. I didn't think I was going to be, because I was school teacher trained. I figured I'd be either some training of basic units or something like that. I never thought I'd leave the country.
Mm-hmm.
So we never really talked about that.
Do you remember the day that, right, I think it was either graduation day or the day before, when they sat you all down and started reading out your MOS and name?
No, they didn't do that with me.
How did you, when did
First
you
of all,
find
in
out?
basic training, I always had trouble with my feet, but I broke both my arches and I couldn't walk. And I was in the hospital for just overnight, but they taped up my feet, sent me back to my unit, and from that point on, I never was in a march. And I'd marched before that, but never was in a march.
They'd haul you around?
In a Jeep
Uh-huh.
or a truck sometimes.
Yep. So when did you get your MOS? When did they tell you where you were going to go to the next school?
Well, actually, I got it because of my broken feet. I didn't go with the rest of the guys when they sent them to the advanced training, whatever it might have been. You never knew what it was going to be at that point. And when that happened, I was in the office. I'm trying to think what they called you, but basically you're holding the office down.
Right.
And so I really didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to the friends I made, and they were gone. That was it. And I didn't find out. The first order I got was to be sent home for 30 days to rest. And I didn't find out until I got that, getting ready to get on, well, I was leaving for the airport from Leonard Wood, and then I got the order that's gone to an infantry training system camp.
And that brings us to the next subject, AIT. And where did you go to AIT?
Fort Polk, Louisiana, the whole of the earth.
Give me a little of your impression when you basically got off the bus there.
Well, as I said, I didn't get off the bus until November. Actually, I flew there from home, and it was the hottest hellhole I'd been in my life, really. I'd only been in Florida a couple times when I was a kid, and this was worse, whole lot more heated than Florida ever was. And this is November, late November.
And it's still hot.
Yeah.
And so then
Sweaty hot.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Polk where they had Tigerland?
Yep. Tiger Ridge, they called it.
Tiger Ridge. And so now you're in AIT. Do you remember the platoon or your sergeant there?
No,
Your platoon sergeant?
no. The one that's always stuck in my head was the one in basic, Sergeant Ridley.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit about AIT.
Well, first of all, I was there, and then they found out I couldn't walk, and they took me from Jeep by Jeep, all different. There's one thing I should have told you in basic. The first time I ever shot a rifle in my life. Now, before that, the only thing I ever shot was a BB gun. The rifle's a whole lot different. But we had these, I don't know how it's called, like hole in the ground, concrete
Where
sewer.
you get down in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get down there, and you're side by side, like you couldn't reach over and touch the next guy.
That was called the firing line.
Yeah. And fired my rifle, but I hadn't fired it yet. And all of a sudden, the rifle goes off. And of course, the drill Sergeant Ridley's on the speakerphone, on the speakers, and he yells out, I usually don't say these things, but especially when it's got God in the name, but who goddamn rifle was that?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I felt something wet on my face, and the guy next to me had stuck the rifle in his mouth and blew his head off.
No.
Yeah. That was my first experience. And I still hadn't fired a rifle.
I can't, Teach, I've never heard this before.
No, I never.
I can't even imagine what that must have.
Well, the brains and stuff was on the side of my uniform. And that was probably, well, I never saw anybody do something like that. I remember there's some people that committed suicide at home I knew of, but didn't do it that way.
So apparently the range was shut down for that day.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. They took the body out, and then we were going to go ahead and fire.
Resumed.
The only difference was I wasn't going to stay in that same hole because the guts were all over.
Yeah.
And blood and stuff.
So you did get your first, that was probably basic rifle marksmanship where you were zeroing in your weapon on a 25-meter rifle.
M1. No, M14.
M14, yep. So AIT was different. A lot more training.
Well, I got my basic, I got marksmanship, got all the big stuff, So I did okay with the rifle. I don't know why, but now I'm in AIT.
What gets me is that you talked about having the foot problems, and they just still send you right on through.
Well, they wrap my feet up.
Yeah, but it just does. Just next, get him to Vietnam. We don't care if he has to crawl to the. It just is my.
Well, there's another little story, and it's kind of a story. My great grandmother, when she first saw me as a baby, now this is during World War II, she told my mother, "I hope he isn't fodder for the war," because they didn't know World War II was going to end or not. And here I am in Vietnam, and that's basically you're just being sent as a target.
Yep.
Actually, I'd ridden in a helicopter to the county fair, and I never rode another helicopter until I got to Vietnam. And they could have taken you on a helicopter ride in advanced training. I still don't, to this day, know why they didn't do that, because that's kind of an experience.
You should, absolutely.
Don't really remember that much of AIT, but...
what do you remember about Tiger Ridge?
Well, there was me and three other guys that don't even, I wish I remembered the name. The one guy was, of course, they're all like 19 or 20 by that time. 18, 19, 20. But three guys plus me in a foxhole. We didn't dig, it was already dug in Tiger Ridge. And we had our poncho over because it rained the whole night, the first night we were there. And it was ice cold rain. And the first thing that happened is armadillo jumped in the hole. And I'm from the north. I never seen an armadillo. Didn't even know what they were, armadillos. That jumped in. You want to see 4 guys jump out of a foxhole and take off, because we didn't know what it was. And you went out there without food. You did have some sea rations for a while, but you were expected to catch food out there. Now, it was so cold that animals weren't going to come out there. Now, this area was a 170,000 acre place.
Oh.
And the animals didn't come other than armadillos, and there was no way I was going to eat an armadillo. I didn't know how you skin the thing or anything. But they would release chickens. And we were these guys, of course, the 3 that were with me were city guys. They didn't even know what a chicken looked like unless it was frozen. Well, I shouldn't even say it. But, never saw them run or anything. And, but we couldn't catch them. I couldn't get one. But when we took the truck out to Tiger Ridge, I had noticed that there was a bar that we passed on the road. Now, how far it was, to this day, I don't know how far it was. It was probably 5-10 miles away. And it was the 3rd night. We were really hungry. And of course, they didn't give you any more sea rations from the start of it. And we were basically, I would say I was starving. I don't know if the other 3 were, and I finally talked them in. I think I could find that bar again. I think I could find the road even. And so that was basically my first, I don't know what you'd call a platoon leader with a squad of 4 or something.
Yeah.
And talked them into, we're going to go looking for this bar. And we found the bar. Of course, we started, as soon as it got dark early, so we started walking to find the road, and then basically we're lucky just to find the road because you didn't have any means of direction where you were. And with the sunset, that didn't help either. And I wasn't able to figure out the stars and all that stuff, so we got to the bar and ate my hamburger. That's a hamburger to remember was there. Of course, they were drinking beer too. I never drank, so that's probably my basic memory. I do remember, now that happened I think it was the 5th night we were there. We were actually out there almost a week. I think it was 7 days and 6 nights. But I remember when they captured guys, they had barrels of cold water, being cold that time of year, and they'd stick them in the barrels. I can remember that.
That was the escape and evasion part of the
Tiger Ridge.
And when you'd be a prisoner.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I never got captured either, so.
So you graduate from AIT, you get on the plane, you land in Benoit.
No, I didn't. See, after that, I went home for Christmas, had another 30-day leave. So I had 30 days between each of them just because of my injuries or my problem with my feet. So I went home with 30-day leave, went through Christmas, New Year's, and I stayed home 45 days instead of 30. And my mom was really worried about that. My mom and dad said, "You're going to get in trouble for this." I said, "What are they going to do, send me to Vietnam? I was already gone there."
Yeah. So when you did get to Vietnam, did you fly into Benoit?
Yep.
Okay, what was your first impression when they opened the door of that aircraft and you stepped out?
Well, the first thing was, of course, they just didn't have a ramp like they do today.
They pushed one up.
No, you just walk down steps.
That's what I meant. They pushed this portable stairway or whatever.
And they were lined up to get on the plane. And they were getting on the back of the plane. We were going out the front. And of course, the heat just about knocks you over because it's 120 degrees, sun beating down on you. And then they sent me into their replacement company. Really, I didn't have an initial reaction to it, but I was sent to this replacement company and actually was there for almost 10 days.
Okay. then you got your orders finally.
No,
and-
now they didn't give me orders until the 10th night that I was there. At 5 o'clock, my name came over the speaker. Went down there, and I didn't see any orders or anything. They just told me I'm going to Saigon.
So what, did they tell you what you were gonna do?
I
Or
had no idea. Didn't know that until I got to Saigon.
did they truck you there?
Jeep,
Okay.
4 of us, plus a driver.
Did you feel a little naked? In Vietnam, did they issue you a weapon? Probably not.
No, they didn't.
Did you think I might be in a dangerous place?
Well, I didn't know. I knew I was going to Saigon. I didn't know what Saigon was other than the capital. Didn't know what it even looked like. It really is a pretty nice city at that time. And this was January the 12th of 2000 or
68.
1968.
Yep.
And the 3 other guys ended up, that was my best buddies when I got there. And then they dropped us off and told us we were going to stay in this hooch. And it wasn't until the next morning I found out what the job was.
And what was that job?
Well, I was a control tower operator. There's about 40 of us, but I was one. And the other 3 guys that went with me, they were actually on the ground directing them people to different planes
Oh yeah,
and helicopters.
like ground crew
Yeah,
type thing.
basically. They didn't refuel, but
So was that I would assume that was a pretty good job.
well, my barracks was air conditioned, which that was a plus. And the first night that I was there, now this is before they told me what my job was or even where it was going to be, but I was on the Air Force Base, and they told you where to go get something to eat, and so I went down there, and this place was unbelievable because I walked in, it's probably the prettiest cafeteria instead of mess hall, but I call it cafeteria.
Yeah.
And they asked you how you wanted your steak done. Steak and potatoes and
Which was unheard of
Yeah.
in the military.
Yep. But it was actually Pentagon West where General Westmoreland worked. He lived right behind that too. And I met Westmoreland. I didn't do that within the first couple of weeks. I met Westmoreland, but
So I think we were talking and you said that all of a sudden Tet.
well, it was 2 weeks. No, it wasn't even 2 weeks. Well, yeah, no, it was January 12th I got there, and Tet was 31st of January. And I was in my barracks at night. Actually, it's two things happened. They had fireworks probably 2 days before it even was Tet time, just celebrating New
Yeah.
Year's. Fireworks were blowing up all over. Now, my company commander, he had told me, or told the 4 of us, he had been there 9 months and never heard a rifle fire. So I thought, boy, this is unbelievable. And so then all of a sudden, I was up in the control tower, and it was almost 120 feet up there. So you could look all over Saigon, basically. And all of a sudden, I did see rockets come in. And I thought, well, those were for Tet, really, sky rockets or
Oh,
something.
you mean like celebration?
Yeah.
Oh, like Roman candles
Yeah,
or something?
well, they're bigger than Roman
Yeah.
candles, but they were actually enemy rockets coming in, but they still didn't know that was start of Tet. Then went back to the barracks that night, had dinner, had supper, went to sleep, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up because I heard something going through the roof of this tin building we were in, and it was bullets going through it. And now my building that I was in, there was the 4 of us, plus helicopter mechanics. I think there's 12 of them, and almost 40 cooks that were there. And then the first sergeant woke us up. Well, I didn't, because I was already awake, but he came down there yelling and screaming, get to the supply room and get your rifles. Now, the only thing I had for a rifle, they issued me a card before that with the serial number. I never saw what the rifle was going to be. I didn't know what it was. Get down there. I remember the supply sergeant, or kid, I shouldn't say kid, but he was a helper for a supply sergeant. It was, you had to present this card, and they're shooting and firing before they give you these rifles. And he'd take that over there and look at all these rifles and match it up
Unbelievable.
with the number before he'd issue the rifle.
What was it, an M14 or?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were still shooting M14s
Yeah.
at that point.
Those things probably had never been fired since World War II, I would guess. I don't know.
So then what were they gonna have you do? I mean, as a group of people, what did
Well,
they?
see, there's four of us, the only ones that were 11B, infantry trained. So the first sergeants, and that probably just because I was older than the group. Now, I wasn't as old as some of those cooks. Some of those cooks were close to retirement age.
Oh my God, they were lifers, you mean?
Yeah, basically.
Okay,
And the mechanics, they were young guys, but then he brought down to the hooch. He had a trailer behind his Jeep and it was full of ammunition. And he said, "Follow him." We went out there. Now, I knew there was a golf course next to us, so we were going to stand guard on the golf course and patrol it for the night, because he kept saying they were going to be coming across the golf course from that village that was across there. And I'd never even been in that village that they talked about. So we were standing guard, digging foxholes with these terrible little shovels. And I even tried to dig with my helmet to get deep enough. It wasn't deep enough, but it's been our first night. Firing our rifles, and then first sergeant next morning came down there. We had fired I don't know how many thousands of rounds we had in that little trailer, so piles of stuff, you know. And we'd fired almost every round we had. And he had been down there to the village, and he congratulated me and the rest of the guys that were there, because he said there wasn't a single window in that entire village that wasn't blown out, had bullet holes. And the other thing he's proud of, because we were told to shoot anything that moves over that golf course, and we did that. But we didn't know that they had goats on the golf course to eat the grass, and we killed every goat. So we were kind of in trouble, because that was Westmoreland's golf course.
yeah. Now, didn't you tell me that all the guys weren't exactly on line? Some of them were behind,
Yeah.
and
It was
one of
where-
the cooks.
They had trees on there, and one of the mistakes we made was trying to dig our foxholes right next to a tree, and we couldn't get through the roots.
roots,
And the
yeah.
roots weren't like little tiny
No.
roots. These things were
Yeah.
century-old trees.
And was there an incident that happened when the
Well, that
shootings-
happened on the first night. Now, we had cooks that probably had never fired a rifle since basic training, and they might have been in service for 15, 20 years by that time. And I don't know. Of course, we're out there in the dark trying to get everybody set out for basically we're trying to control a bunker line.
Yeah,
It wasn't really a bunker
Right.
line, because there were different holes they were at.
Right.
They weren't straight in a row. There was people behind me, but during the night, something happened. I got shot through the helmet, and it grazed me right across my head, which is nothing more than a Band-Aid wound, but scared to death out.
did it turn out to be one of the old cooks that were behind you that was?
Yeah. I was shot by my own guys. It wasn't from the enemy, so.
So that was your first combat,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
And
Spent 4 days out there.
then did you go back in the tower and start
Yep.
controlling planes again?
Well, see, that was the end of January, and I controlled tower for February and almost all of March. And the end of March, orders came that the four of us were going to be, but they were bringing civilians to run the control tower from the States. And the four of us were going to an infantry unit. I knew that. And then when you started reading all this, what it was the Wolfhounds didn't know which company it was, but the Wolfhounds, and didn't even know what Coochie was like. But all we could remember was during Tet that the Wolfhounds had been down guarding Tonsonhood Air Force Base, and they were the scroungiest bunch of people I ever saw. Little did I know, but a couple months later I was going to be with them.
And so you go to Coochie, and now you're assigned to Charlie Company. Who do you remember the circumstance of who you first met, or was it the company clerk at the time, or how did you get plugged into Charlie Company?
It was the first sergeant was the first person I met, and his name was Clappett.
Oh yeah, Tom Clappett,
Yeah.
who has, by the way, since recently passed away.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So okay, Tom Clappett was the first shirt, and then he assigned you to second platoon at that point?
No, not the beginning. We had 5 days of jungle
Oh,
training.
that's right.
first.
Yeah.
Where did they do it with you where you had to get down the foxhole and all that? Well, tunnel too.
Yep.
Because Coochie was actually covered with tunnels, probably a lot more than we ever thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the wasn't first sergeant, but he was at that time. I got a little bit messed up, but the supply company sergeant, that was Sergeant Sisson. That was another first time person I met. He was an E6. But I remember when we went jungle training, he did that. He wasn't the only person, but he was the one that said that Agent Orange, they're talking about that's not going to bother you. And he took a Dixie cup glass full of Agent Orange and drank it. I thought, oh, I'm not doing that. I don't care what it is.
Unbelievable.
And of course, he died shortly after he got out of service. I don't know what he died from, but I always
You
wondered.
can guess. It was it had to be related.
Well, see, like this guy's drinking that stuff at least a cup a day.
Good Lord.
Because they told us that's not going to hurt you. It looked almost like milk.
And so that when you finally did get plugged into the platoon, where were they at? And when did you go out?
I don't know where they were at, but the company commander had been killed, and he later was awarded a Congressional Medal of Honor.
That was Foley,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Am I right on that?
You know, I don't even...
I think that was Foley, yeah. Or no, it started with a P.
Yeah, I don't know, think it
Oh
was
gosh,
Foley.
it wasn't Foley. It was a black guy.
Yeah.
And
He was the first black man to get a Congressional Medal of
and
Honor.
his last name started with a P, and I can't remember it.
I did write up the first orders for the medal. Of course, they were just for whatever medal they were going. I didn't know I was doing a congressional medal for him, but I do remember one of the things. Well, that's a whole nother story. That didn't happen then, but shortly after that.
Well, I'm interested in what it was like when you first joined the platoon.
Thought it was the end of the world.
What's that?
Thought it was the end of the world.
How many guys were left in the platoon?
7 in the company. Now, a company normally would have 120, but when the company commander was killed, the company had terrible. I don't know exactly how many were killed, but
Lots of wounded.
a lot of wounded and
Yep.
killed.
7.
So basically, you couldn't field, the company could not field a force. They couldn't field an
No.
operation, nothing.
When your company commander is a Spec 4, you're in pretty bad shape.
Oh, wow. Wow. And so how long did it take to get reinforcements and so forth?
You know, the actual time, I don't exactly remember, but it's probably a month before we ever even got close to 100.
Do you remember who those guys were that had survived that you first met?
Willie Williams and Cal Johnson was in there, and Sergeant Cutler,
Bruiser?
but he
Mhm.
wasn't a sergeant at that time. I think that was the only ones I remember. I don't know, just the names don't fall back to me.
Yeah. So this must have been like, this is your worst nightmare. I mean, you kind of knew
I found God. First night I was out in the field, I was under a mortar attack, and I showed you that scar. And it was a few days later, I carried a Bible. You know how big your front pocket was? It could fit in that
Yeah,
front pocket. There's a zipper around it. I had a Bible with me. Got shot right through that pocket and hit that Bible. Didn't go through. I can't believe it was an AK-47 that shot me. It probably was just a rifle bullet. I knew it wasn't my guys that shot me too.
Did it knock you down?
Just the pain of it. I actually figured I was shot. I didn't know what hit me at first.
Yeah.
Then I looked at my pocket having a hole in it and pulled my Bible up and unzipped it. It had a hole in it.
And you're new. You're a new guy out there.
I was old in the fact that I'd been in Vietnam for almost 3 full months.
But new to the actual
Yep,
field with
yep.
the company. So what do you remember when they started getting replacements and they had enough guys in a platoon to actually start going out? What do you remember about some of the operations or some of the day-to-day things that you guys would do?
The first thing was that was the first time I went to Ten Toes Cemetery. And the reason they call it Ten Toes because it was Vietnamese people, and I could have been good and bad, I don't know which, but they were buried there and they dug the graves just enough to put the body and throw dirt over, and their toes were sticking out.
Real shallow grave type
Yeah.
deal.
It's hard soil.
Yep.
And we went through there, chased the enemy out. I think it was a total of 5 times over a period of a couple months. That was the worst part of it.
Were you a rifleman at that point?
I had the machine gun for most of that time. I wasn't good with the machine gun, but I had one.
Do you remember who your ammo bearers were?
Yep, Fitzgerald and Higgins.
And were these guys that you had known before, or you just met them in Vietnam, or
One in Saigon.
which one was that?
Both of them.
Oh, so you met those guys in
Yeah,
Saigon?
they took that initial. Actually, there's Higgins, Fitzgerald, Kelly, which was me, and O'Neill. O'Neill, though, he was assigned to a mechanized unit, and it's just Higgins, Fitzgerald, and Kelly. It was infantry.
Okay. And so, ambush patrols,
Night ambush, yeah.
and
Well, they also would set you out. I don't even know what they used to call it. where you-
listening post,
Yeah.
where you'd go out and,
Stay the night. And
or are you talking about night loggers? Where
Night.
you'd have enough guys to set up kind of a
it
temporary
was just
perimeter?
4 of you usually.
Oh, that's a listening post, yeah.
A lot of
So,
this stuff I try to forget.
do you remember the first time your ambush patrol actually popped one?
Never did.
Okay.
Well, I take that back. The first time, the whole platoon was sent out on the Mekong River that I went out. And we set up Claymore mines, and we were lined up actually laying in the river along the berm. And about 2 o'clock, approximately 2 o'clock in the morning, at a starlight scope, and I'm looking through it, and I see people walking down that berm towards me. Didn't know for sure what it was. So I'd whispered down the line, there's just people coming. And they're whispering back and forth and stuff. And anyways, it was an enemy group of people coming. I thought it was all guys, but after I fired the Claymore. That was the only time I think it really killed anybody, and basically, but killed all of them in that group with just one Claymore. We had 2 out there, but just fired the one.
They must have just walked right into the sweet spot.
Yeah, because they were in line too.
Yep.
But then half of them were women. I didn't know that. I didn't know women went out there to fight, and they were there. Vietnamese women.
You know, when I got into the platoon, I was told that they had very recently gotten in a firefight, and there were women, VC women, and they said they were the toughest.
Oh,
they
yeah.
were tougher than any VC man that they'd ever went up against. And I remember one of the guys looked at me and said, "You better just hope you never have to go up against them," because they had a real bad reputation about being really bad.
You know, the only group that was tougher than them was the South Korean women.
Yeah. Yes.
They were over there fighting too.
Yep, with machetes. Now, we had talked earlier, Teach, and by the way, that's another interesting deal. When you talked about Ten Toes Grave, the graveyard,
Yeah.
there was another horrible thing that happened to your guys at Ten Toes, right, with the mechanized.
Oh yeah, that wasn't at Ten Toes, so I don't know where that was. Some woods they called it. But we were out there in patrol at night, and the mechanized unit. Now it was really company C and B that were out there. The mechanized unit. This is probably again 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, but they come rip roaring through there and ran over us with the mech units. And at that time, as I recall, at least 9 people were killed. I don't know if they were in B or C company, so
They literally just ran over
ran
the
over
guys.
them. Yeah.
My,
Now they
my.
didn't shoot and stuff, but they were just running the machines like crazy people run.
Oh yeah.
I hated the mechanized unit.
And by the way, when I got to the company, in August, that was one of the first things I heard about.
I probably told you.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I heard
Because
about.
I would tell stories from the field, but that was one of the worst experiences because that was their own guys doing it.
Oh yeah. Do you remember the first time one of your platoon members got wounded or killed? And what were the circumstances? Where were you at, or what?
Not out of the platoon. I remember the company when it got hit a couple of times. I really wasn't in that many firefights. There's more mortar attacks and stuff. Now that was over a period of 6 months? No, it wasn't even 6 months. I think it's out in the field. Trying to think from end of March, April, and May. Because May 2 is when I got shot.
Okay. And so you told me a story about one of the newer guys that came into the platoon, and you were telling him, whatever you do when we're out during the day, don't get up on the berms, right?
Yeah.
Don't walk on the berms.
He was in our platoon. He was Jewish. I can't think of his name though. He'd only been with the company a few days. The first thing he did, where we set up for the night, putting our bunkers up and stuff, he refused to help build the bunker. And we got hit by a mortar attack that night. And he's trying to squeeze it, and he's big as you, or if not bigger. He was trying to probably look more like your son, trying to squeeze in the bunker, and I said, no, you're not doing that. I'm in the bunker, and the 3 of us, that was Higgins.
We're the ones that made it.
Yeah, because you refused to do it, so you're out there. And he's covered the door up what we had in there for the opening, but he didn't lay in that bunker that night. But he didn't get wounded that night either. It's a couple days later, we were out on the rice paddies, and I told him, now this one thing, I was called Teach by that point. I thought they called me Teach because I was always telling people something. I didn't realize why they made a connection. Although the only ones that knew I'd been a teacher was Higgins and Fitzgerald. And they probably, I'm sure.
It didn't take long for that to get around, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I told him, I said, in this rice paddy, you get down here in the mud. He refused to do that. He's going to walk the berm. And we walked the berm a good half day, if not longer, but then he got shot in the head while he's walking the berm.
And that was the end of that.
That was the only firefight. It was probably a sniper.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It wasn't like all of them shooting and got it. It was just they pinpointed him because he's the biggest target up there standing.
What was your feeling? I mean, were you like, you dumb...
No, I can't say that. I never wished anybody to get killed.
No, I mean, but did you think he was just, I told you so type?
I never said that either, even though I probably thought it, but I
Yeah.
just never, it's just one of those things that's happened so quick, you didn't even know he was killed. We kept on moving. We knew he was wounded, I didn't know he was killed though.
There was an incident that happened to you in May when you guys were on the Fukang Bridge, I believe.
May 2nd.
Would you describe that day for us?
Well, it was with Higgins and Fitzgerald and I very seldom separated. And this is in the evening, mealtime. And they brought food out there, so it wasn't all sea rations and stuff. And we were
In the Mermite, the hot food in the Mermite cans?
Yeah. And of course, we looked forward to that because we'd eaten sea rations for lunch and we didn't want it for dinner too. And so Higgins, Fitzgerald, and I were walking over the bridge because it was on the other side of the bridge where they set the food stuff up. And I don't know who was over there with that group. But anyways, walked over the bridge and I was coming back with the food, going back to the same location because we were guarding the other end of the bridge. And all of a sudden this kid came, little kid, and of course I love kids, and he was just probably, I don't know how young, but I would guess the oldest he could have been was 8, if not younger, maybe even 5, I don't know. But he's handling this water buffalo coming across the bridge, which they were doing that all day long. And all of a sudden that water buffalo, he gets closer to me, and all of a sudden he just takes off and charges for me. And they had concertina wire on both sides of the bridge. And of course I wasn't expecting it. No, only thing I knew, bullfighters, they always said if a bull ever charged you, farm bull or whatever, you grab their horns with both your hands and hang on because those points are going to get you.
Yeah.
And so that thing now a water buffalo, now a bull, when they put their head down, they can't see it, so they always just keeps charging straight. I thought water buffalo would do the same thing, so he put his head down and I just walked over, but he just follows you walking. And I grabbed his horns was the next thing, and he had plugged me in the stomach and pushed me in that concertina wire, which that just enabled you from that because you couldn't move.
No.
And the guys started running, Fitzgerald and Higgins. Now I don't know which one started firing because I always thought it was a lieutenant that fired his .45 to kill the bull because these things would kill you.
Well, I think Willie Williams was in on that.
Yeah, he was there too. There's quite a few people running.
I think
down
Willie actually to this day thinks he's the one that shot you.
Well, there's multiple people. Now, it's just like the name Teach. Everybody says I was the first one to call you Teach. Well, that's, if they did, there's all these different guys.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true too. Well, Fitzgerald and Harold Higgins never called me Teach before we got out there. I mean, when we were in Saigon, they never called me that.
So, do you remember? I mean, were you still conscious? Were you thinking, holy crap,
No, I
this
never
could be
blacked
it?
out or anything. But see, he fired in that water buffalo's head a couple of shots, maybe 3 or 4, and I didn't feel the pain or anything.
But one
I
of
had
them
more
went
pain
into
in my stomach.
into your knee.
Huh?
One of them went into your knee.
Yeah, but that didn't discover that until probably an hour after that. And what it was, Higgins is the one that said, of course, we're wearing a green uniform, blood just drenched the whole leg. And I had blood up here, I knew that, but the bullet went right in. You can see where it entered. It actually ended up as settled under my kneecap.
Is it still there today?
Yeah.
They never went in and tried to fish it out. So the next part of this story.
They tried to get it out in the field hospital, but he couldn't get it. And of course, first thing, the nurse, one of the guys, well, I call them nurses male.
Yeah.
I guess they're
Orderly.
Orderly,
Yeah.
yeah. But he thought that they had numbed it, and he's in there. This doctor's That was the worst experience. The most pain was that.
Good Lord.
Because he worked on probably an hour. And he had a, now it wasn't needle nose plier, but it's almost looked
Kinda like that, yeah.
And he's
A
in there.
hemostat, probably.
I don't even know what
But
it
did
was.
they
It was a
have-
little, like a little.
You weren't numb?
No. He
And
thought
you're
I was
probably
numb.
screaming to beat the band.
No, I didn't. I could
Well,
withstand
But
pain.
the part of the story that I find just incredible is the fact that after this happened, they did not medevac you out
No, I stayed overnight there.
under the bridge.
And Higgins slept right beside me. That was the last time I saw Higgins. I didn't get medevaced out until probably 9 o'clock the next day, direct to the hospital.
And then what happened with Frank Higgins?
Well, the dates, I wasn't out in the field when that happened. Not Higgins, Fitzgerald. I said Higgins stayed. It was Fitzgerald that stayed with me the night.
I remembered the name that I couldn't come up with, Coy Strobel.
That's another story.
Yeah, I remember I was trying to think of a name, remember that? And I couldn't come up, Coy
Yeah.
Strobel was another one.
He was,
He was there when Herb and I got,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm trying to think where he was from. I think it's Arkansas.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Anyways, every time, now he was a hard worker in the unit. He was in my platoon, and I even think we were bunk buddies a couple of times.
Coy?
Yeah,
How about Fitzgerald? So he's the one that you never saw again?
yeah.
And what was the event that happened there?
Well, on May the 11th, he got killed, and I don't even know exactly how it happened. Although I did write the letter back to his parent, to his mother.
And that was, I know Willie was there, Cal was there, Rabbi, I think.
Higgins too.
Higgins was there. Yep. Yep. And that letter, that had to have been probably the toughest.
No, it wasn't the toughest because I'd already written letters for others.
Yeah. Just not.
Just another day, really, which is sad to say, but that's
No,
how it
I
turns
know.
out.
So they did get you into the hospital. Now, to me, with what you're describing, you should have been sent to Japan and home.
Well, I figured with this stomach wound, because anybody that ever came in there with a stomach wound, how big it was, didn't make any difference. Japan, because
Exactly.
it wouldn't heal up in humid weather. But mine wasn't that big. Act like it's kind of like how big was the gun? Well, the barrel was this big. Well, that's kind of how this wound
yeah.
was. It was a small wound.
So when you figured out
It's
they weren't
lucky
going to
that
send,
the thing didn't rip his
oh
head
geez,
up.
could have eviscerated you. When you figured out that you weren't going home or going to Japan,
Well, I thought I was going to,
But
for
I mean,
a day.
one day you figured out I'm not going. Did you think you were going to have to be sent back out to the field?
I knew that's where I was going. That wasn't a big question. They gave me a order to go back to my unit and couldn't see active duty for 2 weeks. So I laid in my bunk for a couple of days, the first couple of days, and then the first sergeant came down, and that was Clappett. He said, I just found out that you were a teacher. I said, yeah. And he says, you taught business? I said, yeah. He says, do you know how to type? I says, yes, I do. So he wanted me to come down to the office. He asked me, you don't mind instead of laying here, when you just, go down and sit in a chair and type some stuff up for us, because we're kind of behind. Went down to the office, and I can't remember the clerk's name that was ahead of me, but he was a young fellow, blonde from California. I remember he had blonde curly hair. He was nice and everything, but he was Army trained to be a clerk. And anyways, he's down there, and he's typing with 2 fingers. He'd go clunk, clunk, and that's the only way he typed it. And he had a pile of papers about 2 foot high sitting on his desk. And the first sergeant said, well, could you type these papers up over here? And I had a pile that's 2 feet high. And I would guess at least probably close to 3,000 pieces of paper. I don't know what all it was, but to actually tell you exactly what I was doing. But we did a lot of typing mimeograph too, so it was that kind of stuff.
But you went a lot faster than hunting and pecking, obviously.
Well,
when your typing skills were
probably 120 words. Now that I was limited on my typing skills because I hadn't typed for it wasn't a year yet, but probably 9 months. My fingers are stiff, but I started, and I did tell the first sergeant, well, yeah, I can type. And I thought to myself, I'd never heard of a typewriter killing anybody. And when I got in there, I learned real quick out what I'd forgotten. I shouldn't say I forgot, it was just stiff fingers.
just to refresh.
Now, actually, I was always trained on electric typewriter, and these were manual. That was hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was typing probably 120 words at that point.
Boy, that's fast too. That's fast. So then you had to go back out,
After 2 weeks, yeah.
and you turned around and looked at the company Quonset hut and thought, man, I sure wish I was staying in there.
Well, the only bad thing about that Quonset hut, it was hot in there. You didn't have air conditioning. That metal just...
Oh, it had to have been an oven.
Yeah.
So you went back out to the guys,
15 days.
and what was that?
When I went out there, I thought, this is the end. I figured that I wouldn't...
Your
I'm not-
luck was.
I'd been wounded. Actually, well, I call it wounds. It really wasn't the head thing.
Yeah.
But I was surprised I wasn't killed then during TET. And I got the wound on the arm and all those mortar attacks. I didn't think you could ever live through another mortar attack. And so I
And
was,
then the water buffalo incident.
yeah, being shot in the knee, you know. So I told the the company commander was Captain Blackwood. When I just walked over there and told him that day, the first full day, I slept overnight out there, but I said, I want to walk point. He says, okay. And I never walked point before that. And that again is where I saw God. There was one, now I don't remember exactly who all was involved, but they were behind me. You know how the point man was way ahead of the company.
Yeah.
And I called back and said, I think there's a bunker ahead. That was one of the scariest things. And the guy, you know his name, he's down here now. Stays over there by Erie.
Dobish.
No, yeah, Dobish, yeah. I forgot his name. I thought I'd never forget that name. But he will tell you a story, and I don't know, I don't quite remember it that way. But he said that I walked up on a bunker sideways to it, and I tossed a hand grenade in there, and it blew up, and there wasn't anybody in there, but I thought there was.
Mhm.
I thought that was kind of a scary situation. So that was probably the third or fourth day I was walking point, because I walked point 15 days straight, and the company commander thought I was a little bit gone crazy, which is probably true. Because what my feeling was, I wasn't going to commit suicide, which we had guys do that.
Yeah.
But I thought, might as well just get shot and get it all over with. If I get killed, at least I'm not here anymore, because it started to rain, and that was another problem I had.
Where you'd end up freezing to death with the evaporation.
And mud and everything else. And it's bad enough the rice paddies, but just having it on you all the time. You know how it rained over there. And
Some of my most discouraging moments were in the rain.
probably, yeah. There's another thing before that happened. Another scary moment was when we were out night patrol, the whole company. And I can remember walking in line, and all of a sudden these guys are walking next to us. Kind of a hedgerow type situation. And I thought it was I'm sure the whole company thought it was the other company, B or C, D or B or something out there. And they were walking this way and I was walking that way. And close enough, if you both stuck your arms out, you'd touch each other, could shake their hand, which we didn't make a noise, but it was really Charlie's.
Walking
Just
right,
passing
walking right.
us in the night, no moonlight. And they probably didn't know who they were passing either. Didn't discover that until the next morning,
Yeah.
really. That was a scary type thing, because we didn't fire a shot, we just kept on walking.
When you said you found God again, or you saw God again when you were walking point, was there any particular day or
Well,
event?
before I walked the first point, I'd made up my mind I'm going to get killed out here, so I might as well get it over with now instead of sitting through all this rain. I didn't want to be one of these guys that you've been here 11 months and get killed that last month. That was what scared me worse. And God basically, I just hoped he would. I was afraid I was going to trip a mine. That's what I was afraid of, because I had big feet, clumsy, and never did that. I always figured, well, he was with me.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Now, I've never told anybody this before. Actually, I thought my grandfather was with me.
You felt that presence.
It felt like almost somebody pushed me sometimes, you know.
Hmm. You know what? I'm not so sure that didn't happen. I had a few experiences in Vietnam where I had similar events happen when I thought it was the end, and on one occasion, actually, I put my head down getting ready to be killed, and I saw my mother's face.
Yeah.
I'd covered my face, and she looked at me, and she said, "It's going to be okay. Don't worry. It's going to be okay." And I interpreted that as dying isn't going to be, horrible.
Yeah. I'll be quick and finish. So
But it didn't turn out that way.
really, I felt that dying was going to be easier than suffering through the
Yeah.
monsoon season.
Yeah, yeah. So then you got back to Cu and you wound up back in the company clerk.
They
spot.
called me. The first sergeant called on the 15th day I was out there. I was walking point that day, and a company commander, all of a sudden he comes across, and my code name was Charlie 2.
Yeah.
And anyways, he said, "Charlie 2," and I said, I think he was Charlie 6. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
he was. That's right.
And anyways, I said that, "What do you want?" And he said, "Why don't you come in?" Now, the reason I thought, I'll tell you, if you want, I can go into the reason I thought. Well, the whole time he walked point, most of the time there'd be a general on the bubble helicopter flying around. And the other thing I did by walking point, if I got tired of walking, because my feet hurt all the time,
Yeah.
and get tired of walking, and I'd call back and say I saw something. Well, the company'd stand
Movement
down.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, something move or whatever. They'd stand down. And I was at that particular time, I was sitting by a big old tree. I don't know what kind of tree it was, but shade. And that was an opportune time for me to eat my fruit cocktail out of the sea ration can. And I was sitting there just eating it. And the helicopter's flying around, and he circled me, and that bothered me. I didn't know what he was looking. I don't even know which general it would have been
Yeah.
up there. And I thought, then I get this call, and I thought, oh, the general says I'm screwing off on him. I'm in trouble, deep trouble. And the company commander wants me to come back, and this, of course, I was probably a half mile ahead or more, and walking through the jungle, and it's hot and everything, and finally get to where the company is, and these guys are, and I remember Higgins especially, he's patting me on the back and all this stuff. And I thought, what's going on? And he didn't say anything, just wishing me good luck and all that crap. And come to company commander, he says, "You're going in tomorrow." Actually, he's going to go that night, but it didn't happen. Didn't get a helicopter out.
And the guys knew it.
Yeah. And I had no idea what it was until just before I left. He said, "They're going to have you be company clerk." And I had no idea that was coming, because I thought Devine was trying to get the company clerk's job, which I felt sorry about for him. But anyways, went in actually next morning.
Do you remember his nickname?
Devine?
Deline? Mike Deline?
No.
Soda Man.
Oh, yeah, it was. Well, Coble's the other one we called Soda Man most of the time
Soda
out in the
Man.
field.
Isn't
Yeah.
that something?
I'm surprised I wasn't called Soda Man instead of Teach. I don't know why they didn't do that. Go in there and first sergeant says, "You're going to take over. The company clerk's leaving in 2 weeks and they want you to take over." So, because I would assume they just get another Army trained clerk, but that didn't happen that way.
In the field, if an 11 Bravo goes in and becomes the company clerk, is there any MOS changes at all?
No, I got that later on.
Okay. But, so you just
When
did...
I went from Sergeant Spec 4 to Spec 5,
Okay.
they changed my MOS. You still kept 11B though, too.
Tell us just briefly, what was your job as company clerk?
Well, your number one duty is the morning report. And the morning report, what it was is, it was a kind of hard to explain without having the form in front of me, but they had listed all the places you put MOSs in and what the different guys that you had in the units, not by platoon, but by company, starting company commander on down.
So there's a lot.
Yeah,
That's
about 120 names.
at any given time, yeah.
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 But you're just keeping track of numbers, you're not keeping track of names. And anyways, then if there'd been a firefight or something, people wounded and killed, you had to tell how many got killed and how many were wounded.
And that kind of kept the numbers straight.
Yeah,
Do you think that had anything to do with getting replacements?
yeah.
If you lost 10,
that went to headquarters.
they'd put in for 10 or whatever?
Yeah. That went to headquarters company. I didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Then each night, during the day, you typed up orders, and you also typed up a roster, usually just one a month, the roster, which was mimeograph
Mm-hmm.
material you're doing. And that took a little time because you list each one by serial number and full name and what their E4s or E5
Mhm.
spec, whatever it is. And you had to do that once a month. And then I had told the guys when I came in, I knew I was going to do this. I said, "There's 2 things I promised. I was going to meet the helicopters when wounded came in." And that was 2 miles away from where I was at. But you'd get a call on the radio that you got wounded coming. Now that could have been anybody in our
Company.
not our company, it's all the companies.
Oh, okay.
So you didn't know if they were wounded from B
Okay,
or
okay.
C or D or what. Or A it could have been too. And I would meet the helicopters, and then the other thing I did is the worst thing it was, I thought, is if you didn't get mail. Now, the job wasn't my job. I had a mail clerk that would sort through the mail and packages and all that stuff. But I'd take mail to the hospital every night for the ones. I remember certain guys especially that Nye was the one when I met him, and I thought, this guy isn't going to make it. He's way beyond
Yep.
even a chance.
Yep.
And he actually, I saw him come in, and he left before I came back with the mail. He was, I don't know where they sent him. I would assume Japan, but I
Mhm.
probably was wrong. It could have been Saigon too. But I didn't know whatever happened to Nye until years later. And I sent a Christmas card to whatever name I had. I'd just taken a chance that he would get it, and he did.
So if you were to think back on your entire tour, what was the absolute worst day in Vietnam for you?
Probably the first time I ever killed anybody with the claymore. I don't know if I'd say that was the worst thing, but that was close to it if it wasn't the worst. Because I never even thought I'd kill anybody.
Did as company clerk, did they ever call you and ask you to come and identify?
Yes.
Tell us just a little bit about that.
Well, they had a place where the body was stored.
Was that graves and registration?
Yeah, it was just trailers.
Was it by the hospital? I can't remember.
Yes, it basically was actually close to the heliport there by
Okay.
the hospital. It wasn't part of the hospital.
And there were people working.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that was an MOS, right?
Yeah. I don't know what the MOS was.
But that, yeah. So would you get a call and they'd say, we need somebody to come over? Or?
Yeah, they do that. That'd come from graves. And they, really, most of them are identified because they had dog tags, but they still want a face-to-face identification.
Kind of a witness, or do you remember the very first guy that?
Not really. I remember the first time I went in there, and of course that was spooky.
Were there a lot of body bags?
No, they were in like a drawer. The
Oh,
body bag was
okay,
basically cold storage.
okay.
The only good thing about that job is you're always working in good air conditioning. But the worst part of it, I don't even know how they did what they did.
You know, those guys that worked that job came home and just had horrible. So there was so many suicides related to guys that worked graves and registration. An inordinate amount, you know, percentage-wise. It was just a horrible.
Well, I always
thing.
wondered if medics wasn't higher than that. Because we had suicide medics
Oh yeah.
in all the companies.
Yep. And the medics, their biggest problem is if they lost somebody.
Yeah.
In other words, their job was to save people. And I remember Doc Turner to this day, his biggest nightmare, as well as one of mine, is when Freddie Hanna, got killed. And Freddie was right in front of me when the RPG came and hit in front of him. And of course, a piece went right here in his chest.
I
and
identified his body.
I wondered about that. And of course, I was right behind him, so I was the first one to get up on him, and I could hear, and it's weird how your training actually does come back. I heard this wheezing sound when he was breathing, and there was blood bubbling.
Yeah.
And I immediately thought sucking chest wound. So I ripped off my compress and got the plastic, and just like it was automatic, put the plastic, and all along I'm yelling for medic. I'm yelling for the medic. And so Doc was way over on the other front of the other file, and he ran right through the fire. I mean, honest to God, he ran right through the kill zone, straight away, and he got to me, and he got down, and he said, "What do we got?" And I said, "Well, he's got a sucking chest wound." And Doc looked at the front, and it was just a little hole about like that. And he said,
Was there a hole in his back too?
so he said, "Roll him over," and he took and cut his fatigue jacket up, and when he went like this, the hole in the back was like that, and the rib cage was exposed, and the lung tissue was exposed. And Doc looked at me, and he had tears in his eyes, and he looked at me and he says, "He ain't gonna make it." Now he's still alive. Freddie was still alive at that point, and he put the fatigue jacket back, rolled him back over, and of course I looked at Doc and I said, "What am I supposed to do?" And he said, "Just hold him and tell him the medevac's on the way, tell him everything's gonna be okay." And Doc gave him a morphine. And
I met his helicopter when it came in.
So, of course, that firefight went on for a while because they had RPG'd the daylights out of us, and we had Larson and Todd and Charlie Hacker and and Hannah, and I think one other guy. I mean, we had wounded and Hannah, and so I can hear the helicopter coming, and I'm talking to him. You know, I'm holding him and I'm talking to him, and he's still breathing. And you know, when the medevacs came in, they had that red light, which I don't know why in the world they talk about a target. And he landed not very far from where we were at. And so Ray Bourgeois was behind me, and I said, we got to get him over to the medevac. Well, just as the medevac was setting down, he took his last breath. And when we put him on the helicopter, boy, I was numb at that point. And they got the wounded and everything on and took him back. And I didn't know until years later that you actually met that. I know now, but I didn't know you were the one that met them, and then you identified.
See, when they brought the helicopter landed, to me, I thought he was still alive. I didn't find out. I thought he died in the hospital.
Yep. And the medics, Doc Turner, to this day, that, you know, his job is to save people. Even though this was nothing, Doc, there's nothing he could do. You know, that was just such a severe damage that there was no way he was going to make it through that. But yeah, medics have a real high suicide rate. So what happened towards the end of your tour? What was that like when you were getting short?
Well, I think I told you this one time, but the thing that happened towards the end, I was in charge of the bunker linemen at base camp. And there's, you know, A, B, C, and D company, all of them. Just at 5 o'clock, I'd line up who's going to go to the bunker line. Did that and send them off. They'd walk down there. And of course, they had a code word you're supposed to know and all that. I usually told them what the code word was. But this one night, I had 2 weeks left. And for some reason, I didn't get what the word was. I got a phone call that said, come to bunker line. You got some problems down there. And I don't know where that call was originated from or anything, because I don't know who told me that was a problem. Got to the bunker line, and I still remember, now they had lights in those bunkers, which I never did understand why they lit these bunkers up. But get down there, and I don't know how I should say this, but there's probably 20 guys in this big bunker, high on pop, all just looking at the light in the ceiling there. I walk in and I says, what are you guys doing in here? I don't remember exactly what, but basically, what's going on here? That was a bunker that was a problem. These guys are all high on pot. And I told them, you know, you get out of here, we're going to send you back, take you back to the base camp. Well, to get there in the first place, I didn't know what the word was, and I got challenged. They were supposed to shoot me. I'd talk my way, to this day, I don't know how I talked my way onto the bunker line. But I did get past that, and I told these guys we're going to get out of this bunker line. And this one big black man, I don't know, he was probably Company B, didn't know him by name or anything. But he said, Sarge, you better get out of here. Holding a rifle, high on pop. And then there's another guy said, Sarge, you better get out of here. And I wasn't going to move. And then all of a sudden I started thinking, I got 2 weeks. I'm going to move. So, make a long story short, I moved, went back, and I told the first sergeant of Company B, he's got a problem down there. And he went and cleaned it out. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I was kind of scared then, but.
So do you remember the day that you got on the Freedom Bird?
Yeah, because Higgins and I went together. And the difference for that going home compared to coming, when we came, we just got off and walked into the building they had there. And the other guys just walked on. But this time, and Higgins was right with me, as we're getting ready, we're the ones waiting to get on the
Right,
plane home.
yeah.
And these new guys are coming off, but what they did was, and I don't know if they did this to you too, but they gave us each one a pistol. And as we walked on, we handed the guys coming off a pistol.
Yeah, I did. They
Just to
didn't do
get off the base,
Yeah,
or get off the tarmac.
that. Yeah, they didn't do that with us.
And that was kind of, I was thinking, how scary is this? Now, we were all happy, basically. Here's your pistol.
Hmm.
And apparently they were told on the plane to, take a pistol and walk to the building.
Well, and you remember when you got off the plane as a new guy, the guys leaving looked like heck. A lot of them looked pretty beat up.
Except they had new uniforms.
Yeah, but I mean, you could just tell they'd,
Well, they'd aged.
yeah,
I probably aged too. So.
yeah. So where did you went to Tonsonhoot? And
No, no, Benoit we took off from. No,
I'm sorry, when you came back to Oakland, right? You flew
went
back
to
into,
Oakland, yeah.
and then did anybody meet you there, or?
Nobody I knew, but I really remember the best. We were cheering because we flew over the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh yeah.
That was the first thing. Then we knew that was America.
Yep.
And it's probably about, well, it was January again, so it was early evening. The Golden Gate Bridge really looked, the sun made it golden more
Oh,
shine.
I'll bet.
And it was sticking above the clouds.
Oh, I bet that was magnificent. So when you got back to the States, did you still have some time owing to
Oh,
serve?
yeah.
And
6 months.
where did you go for that?
Well, I had 30 days leave again, and then I went, so that would have been sometime in probably the middle of February when I went to my assignment, which was Fort Dix, New Jersey.
And what did you do there?
Clerk again, typist and all this.
Did you get promoted there?
No,
So you got promoted to sergeant in Vietnam?
no. I was Spec 5,
Oh,
but I wore Sergeant Stripe because Captain Eicher didn't want me any less than a sergeant.
for heaven's sake.
And so he's the one that, I typed my own orders up, but he's the one that said you should do that, so, because acting sergeants
Yeah,
basically
oh yeah,
what it was.
definitely.
Just so everybody could come in there. And I had some times, I had time with, I told you about that lieutenant, I had time with him, even though I was sergeant, but he was lieutenant. But I worked at Fort Dix at that time. That was a basic training unit too, and I thought I was going to get to a training unit, but I was actually morning reports clerk for all the morning reports came across my desk for the not the company, but the whole.
Was that a lot of work?
Well, you had to check additions and subtractions and all that, and the numbers started running together over time. It wasn't like names or anything you had to check, but just these numbers, so you
Yeah.
could report that to the division what the total number was. You kind of had a form that you filled out to make the total number, how many people are in each unit. They didn't keep it by units, they kept it by the whole division at that time. And I only did that for 2 weeks. And I had a madam major ahead of me.
Is that your home phone?
Yeah, it is. It's not, we talked about this.
This is the alert system with Visa Master.
Yep, more junk.
Yeah. But anyways,
Just making more edit work for me, you two boogers.
she was the person in charge of me, and some other people was under me. And she called me in about the second week. I'd been there for 2 full weeks. I'd actually a little bit longer than that I've been there. But she says, I know you don't like, I really didn't like her, although she never did anything to make me upset or anything. But that was the first time I ever had a woman officer too. But she said, I know you don't like it here. And I said, I did kind of shake my head yes. She said, how would you like going TDY to Camp Drum, New York? I didn't even know where that was in New York, let alone what the camp was. And she said, it's extra pay. And I said, okay, sounds good to me. So I left that weekend, got to Camp Drum, New York on a Monday.
What was your job there?
Morning reports.
So, but just a different place.
Yeah, because Camp Drum was for all the guys that were, can't think what they call it now. When you weren't active military, but reservist training.
Oh,
basically. Yes. And it was all the East Coast, like Boston was the worst part, but New York City and even down to New Jersey, that's where they go for the training.
Where did Frank Higgins end up?
He stayed in Fort Dix. He was training guys apparently. I can't believe he was good at it, but that's what he was doing, training.
Well, you know, they put Vietnam vets in there.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Yeah.
So, when you finished with your career in the Army, you went home. What did you pursue as a livelihood?
Well, our family business, by that time, we just started manufacturing farm equipment. We started that before I went to Vietnam, and we also had retail stores. Retail was a big thing at first when I got home, though.
And when you say retail stores, are we talking about tractor sales?
Yeah.
Okay.
Farm equipment.
Okay.
And my dad had 5 different retail stores. He had a total, now counting but the home-based retail store, the base one that I left with, there was 9 employees. That's how many employees there were. And he made me a partner the day I stepped off the plane from Vietnam, actually. This is before that even. But I was partners with him for, I forget how many years before we incorporated. Because we incorporated in 75, I think it was.
And you were hands-on, active in the business?
Oh, yeah. I was welding equipment and telling people what to do. And I always remember one of the employees said, you know, trouble with you act like this is the Army. Well, I was Army trained, so.
True story.
Yeah.
When you were doing your clerk work in Vietnam, did you write a lot of letters back and forth to your dad?
To my mom.
Your mom?
Every day. Even when I was in the field, I did that.
Now, did you tell your mom, was your mom like a confidant to you? Could you write letters, and was that how you kind of decompress through a lot of the stuff you saw?
Well, first of all, I'd never been away from home that long.
Mm-hmm.
And actually never been away from the business that long. And she knew that. She knew I was going to have a tough time. Because that's the reason I quit Indiana University and went to a local college years before. Because I didn't like being away from home. And when I went to college, I was home probably every weekend. That was a 150-mile drive. And so she wrote me a letter every day, and I wrote her a letter every day. And her letters was at least 1 page, fully loaded, typed, or handwritten. And a lot of times you do 2. And there's been times I got the letters, I would guess even some 5-pagers. Something going on at home.
Yeah. But I've heard this several times, that your dad sent a box of lighters.
Yeah.
And he paid for those for you to give to maintenance.
Well, I asked him. See, he had a Zippo lighter that had the emblem of whatever dealership that was.
Yeah.
Like we had Alice Chalmers, John Deere, Minneapolis Moline, Oliver, and Ford, I think it was.
Huh.
And so I'd written back home and said, now I was a non-smoker, but he was a smoker.
Yeah.
And that's the reason he did this lighter thing. Especially if you bought a tractor, you're going to get a brand new lighter.
Instead of a hat, you get a lighter.
A Zippo's, even to this day,
They're nice.
Still a notable.
But I would guess with the emblem and everything was less than a buck, probably 75 cents or something.
Huh.
And I suggested, I wondered if he could get those. Now, I originally thought I was just going to get them for my friends there. So I thought 20 lighters max, so you know. Well, he sent over 100 lighters, and with the Wolfhound emblem embedded on there. And I'm sure he got the Wolfhound emblem by something is printed. I don't, and they made you know that.
Well,
mold.
they sure did a nice job.
Yeah,
And do you still have one of them?
probably 30.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
But tell him what, then after the 100 came, then what happened?
200,
After that?
More
Yeah.
came.
Oh, geez.
and then that I had probably 30. I had a few more than 30 really that I packed up to send home with me.
When you got home, did you ever say to him, you know, Pop, I don't know if you called him Dad or Pop.
Dad, always called him
Dad, thanks for did you tell him?
No,
He'll never know the reach he had with the soldiers.
well, he knew I appreciated it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he'll never know how many guys were touched by those lighters.
Yeah, I mean, he changed lives with that.
That became, you know, I told you, that was like when you gave me that, I immediately, this was a treasure, you know, and I cherished
See,
that.
I'm not sure when he sent them over because it wasn't the beginning because I was just getting myself knowing what I'm doing there.
Yeah. And every guy,
In August would have
every
been-
guy that went through when you were there and got a lighter, if they lost the lighter, whatever, it's like they lost something very, very, very valuable. Airy Hill, there's an example. Somebody swiped Airy's, and how many times a week does he call you?
Oh,
I'm just kidding. But every time he talks to you, if you
yeah.
found the
Well,
lighter.
he wants to come over and help me open all these boxes. I probably got 50 boxes yet here.
Yeah.
50 boxes of what?
Just all kinds of
Move-
stuff.
From
Oh, I
moving
was
from
thinking
from
like-
See, I
moving to
sent my
Indiana.
business stuff. I've sent it back down here, and I've
Oh,
got
I was
that.
thinking he was talking Vietnam.
No, no.
I was like, my God.
Well, there might be Vietnam stuff in there. So
Wow.
I opened a box. I forget when it was, but I had all these catalogs, 25th Infantry, and I sent you those
Yep.
because I knew that, you know, if I died, nobody'd even know what they are.
Yeah,
Really.
exactly.
You had asked him about he came home and was in the family business. I didn't mean to interrupt, maybe go past that.
Oh,
in
well,
his
and then I
life.
just wanted you to briefly give us a sketch, a thumbnail sketch of your career and how you got into different businesses and kind
It
of
was
grew.
all because of the family business. I was a millionaire the first year after I got back from Vietnam. but
From
that-
the partnership with your dad.
with my dad. We made $2 million, and there's a couple of things that's kind of funny, but you'd have to know my dad. But he let me make all the business decisions. Now he wanted to be an engineer. Well, he was an engineer, but he wanted to be an inventor,
Okay.
and he invented the first backhoe that would fit on a farm tractor, which he's very proud of because it didn't have that before. And he made a loader the first really strong front end loader for a tractor.
The fertilizer loader?
Yeah, manure loader.
Or, yeah.
And he was proud of that too. But I wouldn't have made the first $1 million if it hadn't been for my dad. The only way at that point we had 9 employees at that beginning of the year. We were up to about 90 by the end of the year.
90.
Working in 12,000 square foot building, which was almost unheard of.
on top of each other.
Almost.
What other kind of ventures have you gotten involved with over the years?
Because I was in business with my dad, the first thing I got involved with was my dad was county commissioner. And he would only run for one term. And the Republican Party asked me if I would run. And I was a little bit hesitant on it because I didn't really, politics is really hard, I would guess. I would say it's not that hard, but it's hard. And so I agreed I would do it. And the first election I was in, there's 250,000 total votes in our county, and I won by 133 votes. so it was close.
Mm-hmm.
And the county was Democrat. And Democrats are my best friends that ended up over the period of time. But there's only 9 ever in a century, in the 1900s, there was only 9 Republicans ever elected from our county. My
Wow.
dad was one, and I was the other. And then there's some sheriff that back in 1923, he was elected. It's just unbelievable.
You'd mentioned in our conversation earlier that there was a gas station and a tire store.
Yeah, but that was all my dad's stuff
That was before
when
you...
I was a kid.
Oh, okay. What other things did he have going?
Well, like 5 retail
Right,
stores.
right.
He had a tire store, which was also, in the old days, they also sold appliances at tire stores. So his refrigerators.
Washing machines?
Yeah, didn't have dryers, but you had wash machine, the old wash machine.
You bet.
And then,
The ringer?
yeah. And then he had TV sets was another thing. When the TV started coming through, black and white, and later on in the early 50s, it was color TV. We had the first color TV probably in the whole state, 1954. And of course, it wasn't the kind of TVs you got now, color TV, but
It was color.
yeah, basically.
Yeah. So did you get into any other business ventures yourself?
First the county commissioner, then the second thing I did was TV station, because I was always fascinated being in the TV station business. I did that for 5 years. I took
Still
over.
doing the implement company?
Yeah,
Okay.
and county commissioner at the same time. I had 3 jobs. I worked day and night, basically. Only I didn't even take Sundays off. I did take Sunday afternoon, I'd take a nap. That was one of the main enjoyments I had. Did it for 5 years. And then we sold the TV station. And what else did I? Well, then I started teaching school again. That was my basic training I wanted to do. And I taught from 1983 to year 2001.
Still doing the implement company?
Yeah. Now when I say I taught school, I didn't teach full time, but then what would happen is, certain teachers, either they were pregnant or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
And then
So you'd go in for a period of time and
Well, sometimes when it's like a pregnancy, it's gonna be a long period.
6 months or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah.
And then I even replaced certain teachers that were either died or was in at least hospitalized.
Mhm.
Sometimes they call me and it's just for the day, all the time is 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th graders.
And then you got into the real estate business eventually.
Yeah, I did that too. Bought real estate in Florida, and I had 12 hotels as partnership with a guy. Had a restaurant for 3 years.
You really liked that, didn't you? You liked the restaurant.
I like to cook. Yeah,
That's what I mean. That
Yeah.
was...
What kind of restaurant was it?
just a bar, basically. I should say it was just a bar. But
With a grill type.
Yeah.
Was that a moneymaker?
Well, I was in partnership too on that, because the guy that was with the partnership, he's younger and he's really just a kid. I called him kid a lot of times, but he worked hard at it. His grandfather had been in a restaurant business. His grandfather had the business going while we had ours. So he was looking for financial stability,
Yeah.
and that's how I got involved.
Yeah.
But even though it was a bar, what I did on Friday and Saturday night, if I was in town, would set up is almost like a stage in the second room that we had, and both of us would be up on the stage with fryers and everything, and you'd come in there and you'd pay $50, just a couple is what it was, $50 a couple plus drinks, and they didn't know what they're going to get to eat or not. It's just whatever came up. We had the stuff there, we cooked it. So it might be fried chicken, it might not be. It might be fish, it could
But
be
people
anything.
love that.
Yeah.
That was a craze back then, to get surprised.
Basically, it's from 6:30 to about 10,
The chef's, like chef's table, I guess it would be.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spotlight on the grill and all this
Oh,
stuff.
wow, yeah. So, overall looking, at your life and your involvement in politics and your Vietnam experiences, is there anything that I have not brought up that you would like to add to your story as far as your history? Is there anything at all that I have?
I never had kids. I had 2 nephews, my brother had them. And they called me, first word that came out of their mouth was trying to say Dave. But they started calling me Dad. And it didn't bother my brother at all, but it did bother his wife. But they would call me Dad all the way from grade school to high school. And that was probably the most exciting part of my life, I thought, because they were my kids.
You still close to those boys to this day?
Yeah. And they're in their 40s now. Matter of fact, the one just had a birthday a couple of days ago. The youngest one, he went 41. So. Proud of them, too.
Yeah.
Both of them are straight A students, grade school, high school, college. And, of course, I take it as part of my history. I think some of their brains, of course, my brother is super smart. But he didn't know how to handle kids either, but that's another reason they called me Dad so much.
Were you the older brother?
Yeah.
And that's why you went into business with your dad. It wasn't did your younger brother ever have
Well,
hard
that's something I
feelings?
didn't tell you. He was a professor in Colorado University.
I see.
That's where he went to school too. And he was he did that, I think, for 7 years. But he wanted to work for IBM. They were out in Denver. And he tried to get a job there, but they told him, if you get, we'll hire you, but your pay is just every year you just get a certain percentage increase, no matter what you do, good or bad. You're going to get this percentage increase every year. And while I was in Vietnam, if it hadn't been for Disney, that's a whole nother story, but Disney, I started buying Disney stock from the 8th grade on.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
And anyways, my brother, I'd get letters probably every other week, typewritten letters, 4 and 5 pages long, just solid typewritten things. And of course he could type very much better than I could even. And he would tell me all the stuff's going on at Disney and that they're talking about this park down here. And of course I was down here before I went to Vietnam because there was a welcome station at first. And what they're doing, and every article he had, if he could cut it out of a magazine or something, he'd send it to me. And so that kind of helped time pass and stuff. But
An interesting story that you shared with me is when you started accumulating Disney stock, one of your best buys was in Vietnam.
wasn't the best buy.
I mean, but it was a unique,
Easy
I guess,
buy.
a unique opportunity in Vietnam.
Now, we looked in my book, and I think the guy's name was in that book. I still can't remember what his name was, but he was a foxhole buddy. He was in our platoon at the time. Early on, anyways, at night, you start talking about stuff, and I don't know, I said, well, my dad was in business, and that's what I wanted to be, and all that stuff. Probably told him I wanted to be a school teacher, too. But anyways, long story, he basically, just out of the blue, he says, well, I buy Disney stock. You do? Well, I do too. And basically he was started when he was in the 8th grade.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And at that time, that early age of buying stock.
And basically, wasn't it just cartoons at that point?
No, they had some, you know, he had 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Okay,
And True Life Adventures, and he had Disneyland TV show, and Zorro was another.
Okay.
Mouseketeer show, and I can't remember. There was something else they had too. Can't remember. Swamp Fox. That was
Oh, that's right.
we
Yep,
talked
yep.
about those shows, but then he said he bought stock, and I said, "You not here though." I thought, you know, well, yeah, I can buy them here too. Go Saigon, you can get it from Bank of America, and there's no commission charge. See, there's always a real high commission charge because I didn't actually buy like 100 shares or more. That was that would lower the charge
Yes,
some.
yes.
As you know, if I had enough money to buy 2 shares, I bought it. There was a few times I had enough for 10 shares. But he said, you go to Bank of America, there's absolutely no charges. They just buy the shares for you and
Dollar for dollar, and
yeah, and go home with, or be sent home, or you could get them and keep them there, which I wasn't gonna do that. And he did the same thing, and so, and now he got transferred for some reason. I don't know what happened, because he's never wounded, and I never asked either. But anyways, that's what I came home with, $22,000 in Disney stock over the years there.
that sounds like all the money you made.
Well, it was 2 things. It was money I made in the Army, but it was also money my dad was, even though I wasn't there home to work, but he'd send me $50 a week.
I gotcha.
And I bought stock. But now he came down, he lived in Michigan, and he came down to visit me. And I'm sorry I don't remember his name, though.
Now, I never asked you this. Have you ever sold any of that stock?
Oh, yeah. You buy and sell.
Okay.
You had talked about Saigon. Did you ever get an R&R? Did you take
Yeah.
how many?
1.
And where did you go?
Hawaii.
Well, how did you get that? Because you weren't married.
I was a guy that was...
You cherry-picked
No,
it
that's
for
really
you.
not true in a way.
It's kinda.
I had told Captain Eichner that I'd like to go to Hawaii because my folks or someplace so I could meet my folks.
Wow.
Australia is what we planned on,
Yeah.
but that was going to be a lot more expensive trip and longer trip and all that. And it just happened I got these Hawaiian things, and it was in October, so it was almost at the end of the time, and he says, he just happens, I called him up and said, I got so many trips to Hong Kong and all this other stuff, and who do you recommend for a trip? Or get volunteers or something. And there wasn't enough to fill it. The Hawaiian bunch, there was a couple extra actually. I had to lose one, but I went to Hawaii.
Nice.
And he told you to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I asked him, because I knew you were supposed to be married.
Yeah.
Now, there's 2 ways I could have done it. I could have said, well, I want to get married or something. I don't know if that would have worked. I wasn't that desperate to see Hawaii. Because
Yeah.
I'd been to Hawaii, landed on the way to Vietnam, coming over.
Yep. And before this interview's over, I have to mention that the very house that we're sitting in right now, back to Disney, over the many, many years that you've been involved with the Disney business, you have collected a lot
Yeah.
of Disney collectibles.
I
And
thought you were going to say you're crazy for collecting all of it.
are you kidding? I think you might be one of the smartest guys I know. That's what I think. But every room in the house and the bedrooms have a theme. Can you just share a couple of kind of verbally walk us through the house and tell us what?
Well, it's a 2-story house. My upstairs bedroom, it's not my bedroom, but an extra room, first room, is a Mickey Mouse bedroom. And then the other room is Snow White, 7 Dwarfs bedroom, and the Haunted Mansion bedroom is the 3rd bedroom up there. And the 4th bedroom is kind of a conglomeration of different rides, themes. And then my bedroom that I have downstairs is just Disney. And then, of course, the living room, dining room's themed with all kinds of Disney stuff.
Well, Teach, I want to first of all thank you again for allowing me to come and spend time with you. And I want, for people that watch this, I need to reiterate the fact of what part you personally have played in getting me and the Wolfhound group to this point where we are now able to, when I started looking for guys, I know we talked all the time because you were my guy that could remember. You could remember, not only could you remember their names, you could remember their hometowns. And of course, for me to find somebody, the first thing I had to do is get a name and a hometown.
You gotta remember, we didn't have computers then either.
Oh, no. And so you've been such a important part of this whole, since 2002, you know, and that's been a while, hasn't it?
Yep.
And again, I know I haven't thanked you enough for, you know, how you were always willing to help me and offer, you know, the most help that you could give me and stuff. So, and in kind of bringing this to a close, I'd like to ask you, what is your definition of a hero?
That's a hard question, really. Because first of all, anybody thought I was a brave person, that's false. I was probably the biggest chicken that was over there. You know, personally, my hero was Alan O'Neill. To get in a rocket and be shot to the moon, that was a hero to me. I don't really know if there's certain, I met heroes in Vietnam, and probably the biggest hero for me was two of my closest, I felt as my closest buddy, and that was Cal and Willie Williams. You know, it's one of those things, you don't know exactly when that happened. Mm-hmm. Now, I was also, for 20 years, I was selective service commissioner for Indiana, and they talked about crystallizing for COs, conscious objectives. But those two guys, they crystallized what I call a hero. And there's other, well, of course, personally, probably my most, I don't know what happened, don't know how it happened or what all took place, but Fitzgerald to me was a hero too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you couldn't have, there's no more coward than me,
So says you.
Yeah. Well, I was never a hero.
Hey, you walked point for 15 days straight.
Well, I was nuts then. I thought that was going to save me. That's the only reason I did that. I made up my mind, this is it. So.
Next thing I'd like to ask you is, what does the American flag mean to you?
Well, this happened before Vietnam, and it didn't crystallize until after Vietnam, but it's always been a tremendous symbol for me, and serving in the Army was a symbol of that flag, I thought, and every veteran that served. It always made me mad when people wouldn't even, you know, just the last couple of years, they won't even stand up for the flag. I do that in Disney World. When they raise the flag or lower it, I'm there.
Absolutely.
If I'm in Disney World at the time, I'm there on the Main Street area where the flag is at.
You know, you're not getting any younger.
75 in 2 weeks.
75 in 2 weeks. And would you say you've lived a good life?
I've lived a good life. I want to be better too.
So you know, you're in the last, we'll say the last quarter of your life, maybe.
Probably. I'm not going to live to be 100 and all that.
Yeah. What would you tell? How if I could just be kind of nosy, how do you want us to remember you? What do you feel like your legacy is? How will you be remembered, Keith?
Remember, I love children.
Mm-hmm.
Never had any children, but I love them. Had a lot of children I met in Vietnam too. I've got my tombstone already at home, but I was gonna put on there, remember he loved children. I didn't do that.
What did you have put on it?
I got a picture in there, I have to look it up for you to see it. I had a Mickey Mouse ears put on, and an army emblem put on. Wolfhounds is on one side. It says I served the 2nd Platoon, 27th Infantry, all that. It doesn't have the platoon number, it's 21st and 27th, 25th Division. It's a pretty big stone, but it has been a lot bigger to put things I really wanted.
Yeah.
On, so.
Last thing. If you were to give advice to young people today, including anybody in your own direct or family, what advice would you give them, or the many generations to come that are going to watch this someday, that, you know, one of these years to come when you and I aren't here, somebody in the family, a grandkid, a great-great-grandkid, whatever, they're going to be doing a project, and you know what Ancestry.com is, right? Where you can go and find your roots and find who you're related to. This program that we're doing with the oral history is going to be like the Ancestry.com of Dave Kelly's service and his life for your family generations to come. I'd just like you to look right in the camera and give them your very best advice on what you would tell them to, as far as...
What I'm worried about that's gone on today, what you gotta remember is honor the veterans. No matter what unit they were with or what service they were in, honor the veterans and honor your flag. And I'm not even sure if we'll have the American flag much longer. You know, there's talk about changing it and all that stuff. That upsets me, but those are the main things.
Well, you know what? If they try to do that, you and I won't tolerate that. And I know there's a lot of you and me's out here. There's a lot of guys that would never, you know, if they tried to change our flag, I think that would be the biggest mistake they ever tried to pull.
I guess it's going to happen within the next 20 years that they're going to change the flag.
I can't even imagine it.
I can't either, but that's what they're talking about. Because, you know, they've destroyed all these monuments and statues, and even Confederate people's statues. I don't know why they were torn down. Because that's our history. They may not be good people in all respects, but they were still part of American history.
Yep, and that is our history, good, bad, or indifferent.
That's right.
You
You're
know,
not going to change that.
No. I mean, nobody said it was a perfect nation. Not that I know of, anyway. Now, I want you to know, Teach, that one of the main reasons we came today is because we wanted to honor your service. And that's this whole deal. All this is all about is honoring our guys that we served with. We want to honor everybody, but we have personal relationships that we have in the platoon and in the company. And I thought it was so important that generations to come would know that our service was not for nothing. What we did, our service was not for nothing. And I want a permanent record. You know, this is gonna be going to the National Archives and so forth, and it'll be, we're gonna try to get the funding to have this up on the website for 100 years, so that generation after generation will have access to this stuff. And I found out that nobody else is doing this. There is nobody, you know, they have the Veterans Project where you call in and say a few things on an 800 line. That's not this. And so I wanted to let you know that our primary reason for coming and talking to you about your life and service is that we wanted to honor you.
Well, one thing I really do feel this deep down, Vietnam was a waste. You know, it was wasted lives, wasted
Yep.
money, and I just hope we never get in a war again. And I kind of feel that way with the war that's gone in Afghanistan and Iraq too. I just hate to see them be wasted like this.
Yep. Well, and you know as well as I do, you know, none of us like war, but, you know, people, you know, say, oh, I hate this and I hate that. Well, it's okay to hate the war, but don't hate the warrior.
Well, that's true.
So,
But
well,
the next big war, whatever it is going. I'm afraid it's going to be a civil war next. I don't know what year that is. I'm good at predicting things, but I would guess within 50 years we'll have a civil war in this country. That's the reason we got to honor the flag and honor the veterans.
yes. Well, Teach, any final thoughts?
Well, this isn't as bad as I thought it'd be. It's bad, but not nearly as bad as it could have been. Actually, if I knew you were going to do this, I probably would have refused.
That's why you didn't.
Because I didn't know what was going to happen.
That's, you know what, that's how important this is. And
Yeah, but I don't feel as I was part of it, really.
You know what's funny? And when I show you the link to the website, as you just said that, you've got to understand, tonight when you lay your head down, maybe you'll get it. You had an impact on more men. Your name is mentioned in more interviews than any other person's name is.
Well, it's good though.
oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, the fact of the matter is that
You had more.
an
You had
impact
more
that reaches
touch.
You don't realize.
You touched more guys, Teach, than anybody else in the
I
whole
shouldn't have
two-
been touching people. I don't know why I
Well,
did that.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I mean, honest to Pete, and I've thought about this over the years. And when it really got to me is when in 2002, when I realized I was desperately in trouble because I didn't have the names. I couldn't. I had a real black spot. I blocked so much stuff out, and then the nickname problem. And I had no idea where they were from. And then when Smokes called me and said, well, have you talked to Teach? And I said, well, no, where's he at? And then he hooked me up with you. That's when the whole project really got off the ground, because now, when you and I would talk, I would just write. As fast as you were talking, I was writing. And I can't believe how much you remembered. I mean, you remembered guys' hometowns. I mean, it was amazing. So when Tim says that the guys mention your name more than anybody else, that's no joke.
What I really regret is the fact that I didn't get their birthday. I had that in my luggage, but it was taken away from me.
Yeah. With the orders and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Boy, can you imagine the gold mine that would have been?
Well, it would have been to me because I was saying birthday.
Oh, I know, but I mean, just now looking, hindsight's 2020. If you could have sent me copies of all
Yeah.
that stuff, man, that would have quickened stuff in a hurry. Okay, Teach, thank you, my friend.
Yep.
And it's been just an honor and a pleasure to spend
more
this
than welcome.
time with you. You're a good man.
Thank you. Sometimes I wonder.
No, you're a good man.